Hello, everyone, and welcome to Firstpost America. I'm Eric Ham, and we're in Washington, D.C. And today we've got the latest on the White House continued crackdown on U.S. cities, along with more rising tensions between Washington and Venezuela. All that and more coming up, but first, the latest global headlines. Syrian President al-Shara meets a senior Kurdish leader in Aleppo with U.S. officials present. Their first encounter since July as clashes erupt, and a stalled deal on integrating Kurdish regions hangs in the balance. The World Bank raises India's fiscal year 26 growth outlook to 6.5%, citing strong domestic demand, rural recovery, and tax reforms, but warns the Trump tariffs could hit exports next year. Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov calls on Western nations to drop sanctions and hostile policies against Afghanistan, saying that the Taliban government is working to stabilize the country as Moscow hosts regional talks and deepens ties with Kabul. European Union members reportedly moved closer to restricting Russian diplomats' travel within the bloc under a new plan that would require them to seek approval before crossing into other EU states. And a trio of U.S.-based scientists win the 2025 Nobel Prize in Physics for groundbreaking experiments paving the way for advances in quantum computing and cryptography. Today we begin in the United States, where President Donald Trump has escalated a confrontation with Democratic-led states by openly threatening to invoke the U.S. Insurrection Act. Now, the Insurrection Act is a centuries-old law that gives the president sweeping powers to deploy the military on U.S. soil. The move comes after multiple courts blocked his attempts to send National Guard troops into cities without local consent.
Insurrection Act, under what conditions or terms would you?
Well, I'd do it if it was necessary. So far, it hasn't been necessary, but we have an Insurrection Act for a reason. If I had to enact it, I'd do that. If people were being killed and courts were holding us up, or governors or mayors were holding us up, sure, I'd do that. I mean, I want to make sure that people aren't killed.
The act was last used during the 1992 Los Angeles riots and is one of the few exceptions to the Posse Comitatus Act, which generally forbids using the military for domestic policing. Historically, it's been reserved for extreme unrest or to protect civil rights. President Trump, however, has long floated the idea of invoking it for routine law enforcement, from immigration crackdowns to protest. Now, legal experts and lawmakers warn that such a move could undermine civil liberties and tilt the balance of power between states and Washington. In fact, the Illinois governor even blamed the Trump administration for following a playbook of causing chaos, creating fear, and making demonstrations seem like a violent mob.
The Trump administration is following a playbook: cause chaos, create fear and confusion, make it seem like peaceful protesters are a mob by firing gas pellets and tear gas canisters at them. Why? To create the pretext for invoking the Insurrection Act, so that he can send military troops to our city.
Now, the immediate flashpoint is both Chicago and Portland, and over the weekend, federal judges issued orders blocking President Trump from deploying hundreds of out-of-state Guard troops to Oregon. At the same time, Illinois sued the White House after Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth brought 300 Illinois Guard members under federal control and mobilized 400 more from Texas for deployment to Chicago. Despite the falling murder rate in the Windy City, nearly half of what it was at the height of the pandemic, President Trump has still insisted that the city is like a war zone. Judges have so far allowed some deployments to continue while the lawsuits proceed, but warn the president may have exceeded his authority. In fact, Chicago's case marks the fourth lawsuit against President Trump's domestic military operations. And over the weekend, scores of protesters faced off against federal immigration agents on Chicago's southwest side after a Border Patrol agent shot an armed woman. ICE agents fired pepper spray and rubber bullets as part of a heated exchange with protesters.
Caracas, what's going on? These are war zones. These are war zones in neighborhoods that are full of life, full of culture, full of life, full of vibrancy. We love our diversity, and we gotta unite working people against this fascist authoritarian regime.
The political battle has also spilled into social media, with Oregon Republicans trying to rally support for the president by sharing a dramatic image purporting to show protests in Portland spiraling into chaos. The same image was posted on X, Instagram, and Facebook, but it turned out to be a fake composite. The photo stitched together riot police from Ecuador in 2008 and a fiery demonstration in Brazil in 2017. One of the shields even wore the word "policia," a glaring clue that it wasn't American. After users exposed the fabrication, the posts were deleted from X and Instagram. However, the Facebook status still remains online. But stakes are even more serious, with troops already in transit, governors mounting lawsuits, and President Trump mulling emergency powers unseen in decades. The question still remains, will the president take the step of invoking the Insurrection Act? And now to Venezuela, where President Nicolas Maduro said his government warned Washington about plans by a local extremist terrorist group to place an explosive device at the U.S. Embassy in Caracas. In a televised address, the president announced that his security forces prevented what he described as a false flag operation aimed at planting explosive at the U.S. Embassy.
This is a typical false flag operation, we could call it. A typical provocation operation to then create a scandal and use the communication power through networks and media to blame the Bolivarian government and start an escalation of confrontation where nobody's going to ask how it was done, who did it, where nobody's going to listen to anyone, but instead they're going to hear the rattling of machine guns and missiles. So it was a provocation action.
He added that the operation was intended to escalate tensions between Venezuela and the U.S., but President Maduro stated that two sources, one domestic and one international, had informed the government of the possible attack by what he referred to as extremist sectors of the local Venezuelan right.
Now it's been confirmed, and as soon as I personally was able to verify that in the information we had there was a credible and very destructive threat by the terrorist group that was taking care of this type of thing, I ordered Comrade Jorge Rodriguez to communicate through all channels with the United States government. He did it immediately. The reaction of the people who communicated with Jorge Rodriguez was positive.
Now, according to Maduro, the terror group may have placed an explosive device at the U.S. Embassy with the intent of laying blame of the Venezuelan government and provoking a conflict with the United States. He added that the operation was allegedly backed by individuals whose names will be disclosed in due course and that investigations are still ongoing.
The investigation continues. I can say that this afternoon, Dr. Jorge Rodriguez, head of peace dialogues for Venezuela, officially informed the United States government of those responsible for preparing this terrorist attack and where those responsible are located. He also informed them that as far as we're concerned, we're pursuing the search and capture of some of these individuals who are in Venezuelan territory.
Now, the embassy has been largely inactive since March of 2019 following President Donald Trump's decision during his first term in office to break ties with Maduro. Since then, the embassy has maintained only staff responsible for security and the upkeep of the premises. Diplomatic tensions between the U.S. and Venezuela have only been compounded by a series of recent U.S. military strikes targeting Venezuelan vessels which Washington claims were carrying drugs. At least 4 vessels have been attacked in the past few weeks, with over 20 people reported killed in these strikes. Speaking to the U.S. Navy sailors in Virginia, President Trump described the operations as stopping drugs at an unprecedented level.
In recent weeks, the Navy has supported our mission to blow the cartel terrorists the hell out of the water. You see that? And you know, there are no boats in the water anymore. You can't find any. We're having a hard time finding them. But, you know, it's a pretty tough thing we've been doing, but you have to think of it this way. Every one of those boats is responsible for the death of 25,000 American people and the destruction of families.
President Trump has accused Maduro of being one of the world's major drug traffickers. Maduro, however, has repeatedly dismissed these claims, accusing the United States of fabricating the narrative in an effort to remove him from power. The news of an alleged plan to attack U.S. Embassy in Caracas comes as a report indicated that President Trump has called off diplomatic outreach to Venezuela. The report stated that the U.S. president has instructed his special envoy Richard Grenell to cease negotiations with Maduro's government. Now, amid these tensions, hundreds of Venezuelans marched in Caracas on Monday demanding respect for the country's sovereignty and peace. The Political and social groups organized a demonstration displaying banners rejecting foreign interference and showing support for President Maduro.
To North American imperialism, we reaffirm, we will not trust them, not even a little bit. Our worker president Nicolas Maduro stands firm with his people to resist the blows of imperialism and emerge victorious in this battle through the construction of peace.
And as the investigation into alleged embassy attack continues and both nations maintain a strong military presence, the ties between the U.S. and Venezuela remain volatile, leaving growing concerns about what comes next. 2 years ago, Hamas-led militants launched a surprise attack at the site of the Nova Music Festival in southern Israel. They also breached the Gaza-Israel border, storming communities with gunfire, rockets, and grenades. More than 1,200 people were killed and over 250 Israelis were taken hostage. What followed wasn't just retaliation, it was war. Israel began bombing Gaza as Prime Minister Netanyahu vowed to destroy Hamas. Since then, more than 67,000 Palestinians have in fact been killed. And the assault continues 2 years later with Israeli tanks, boats, and jets pounding parts of Gaza. Our next report brings you details of the day that changed everything in the war that refuses to end.
It began with music and ended with mayhem. October 7th, 2023. It was the final day of the Jewish festival of Sukkot. Small dots in the sky were spotted, believed to be exploded rockets. Allahu Akbar! And moments later, Hamas fighters stormed across the border and entered southern Israel. They walked through the destroyed border fence, burning buildings and infrastructure. What followed was gunfire, rockets, grenades, a surprise assault that became the bloodiest day in Israel's history. Overall, 1,219 people on the Israeli side were killed by Hamas. 251 were dragged into Gaza and held captive. In the aftermath, the streets of Israel looked like scenes from a nightmare. Burning cars strewn across highways. Dead bodies lying around. Black smoke curling into the sky. The air thick with the smell of fire and fear.
At 6 o'clock, I heard explosions and sirens. I checked online and saw that terrorists had infiltrated. I went out and saw many bodies of terrorists and civilians. So many bodies, so many bodies.
In just hours, decades of tension detonated into full-scale war. Israel hit back hard and fast. An air campaign. Several high-rise buildings in Gaza were struck and leveled in a thick cloud of dust and smoke.
Citizens of Israel, we are at war, not in an operation or in rounds, but at war. This morning, Hamas launched a murderous surprise attack against the state of Israel and its citizens. We have been in this since the early morning hours.
Then came the ground invasion. Entire families buried beneath their homes.
I have been searching for my son, who has been missing since October 13th, 2024. The house was bombed while he was showering inside it, and he remains in the house. I am searching for his body. I am digging.
Where's my son? I want to know his fate. There is fire in my heart. If he was buried and they tell us he is buried, it would be easier on me than not knowing. We want to know.
Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu vowed to fight until every hostage returns, and Hamas is erased.
The IDF is about to use all its force to destroy Hamas's capabilities. We'll strike them to the bitter end and avenge with force this black day they brought on Israel and its people.
Several Hamas leaders have been struck down since the war began, but the group still remains. Ismail Haniyeh in July 2024. Mohammed Deif in July 2024. Yahya Sinwar in October 2024. And in May this year, Mohammed Sinwar. 2 years later, Gaza lies in rubble. Entire neighborhoods have vanished, swallowed by concrete and memory. According to Gaza's health ministry, 6,000 to 7,000 Palestinians have died so far. Hospitals lie in ruins. Refugee camps have been turned into graveyards. And now hunger is the new weapon. The UN officially declared famine in Gaza in late August. According to Gaza's health ministry, Palestinian deaths linked to hunger and famine have reached at least 460. Many human rights groups and scholars now call the war in Gaza a genocide. Israel rejects that charge, saying it's fighting for survival, not destruction. The fire has spread beyond Gaza. Over the course of war, Israel has expanded its military reach. It has struck 5 countries in the Middle East, including Iran, Syria, Lebanon, Qatar, and Yemen. Over time, the war has shifted global opinion. Since that dark October day, 20 more nations, including France, Spain, Canada, have recognized Palestine as a state. Fast forward to the present day, memorial events are scheduled in Israel to mark the 2-year anniversary of the war. Relatives and friends of those killed at the Nova Music Festival in 2023 lit candles at the site of the attack in southern Israel. A state-organized commemoration is planned for October 16th. The war has previously seen 2 brief ceasefires that enabled the release of dozens of hostages. And now Egypt is hosting talks to bring an end to the war. The outcome? Yet to be known. 2 years on, Israel still counts its dead and missing. Gaza still buries its tomorrow. The war began with fire. It burns still across borders, beliefs, and generations. What started as a day of terror on October 7, 2023, has become an endless reckoning. A war that has no winners, only survivors carrying the weight of what the world could not stop.
In typical fashion, President Donald Trump has taken a swipe at climate activist Greta Thunberg, saying she needs to see a doctor for what he described as an anger management problem. Speaking to reporters on Monday, President Trump said that Thunberg is no longer into the environment, adding that she appears so angry for someone so young.
She's just a troublemaker, you know. I mean, she's no longer into the environment, now she's into this. She's a troublemaker. She has an anger management problem. I think she should see a doctor. She needs anger. If you ever watch her, she's a young person. She's so angry. She's so crazy. Now you can have her. She's just a troublemaker.
The remarks come shortly after Thunberg was deported from Israel, where she was participating in an international campaign aimed at delivering aid to Gaza. Now, Thunberg had been part of the Global Sukkot Flotilla, a humanitarian initiative that sought to bring aid to civilians in Gaza, which is under a blockade maintained by both Israel and Egypt. On Monday, she was among 171 activists deported from Israel, with the ships redirected to Greece and Slovakia. The flotilla departed from Barcelona in Spain in early September and was intercepted by the Israeli Navy off Egypt just last week. After Thunberg landed in Greece, a crowd of activists unfurled a huge Palestinian flag in the arrivals hall of the Athens airport as chants for Palestine's freedom echoed throughout its premises. Thunberg described the global flotilla as the largest attempt to challenge what she called Israel's illegal and inhumane siege by sea. She also expressed concern about the lack of government action to address the humanitarian situation in Gaza.
Do not let me and other volunteers on the flotilla be a distraction. And the Global Summit Flotilla is about solidarity with Palestinians, international solidarity. And what Israel did was mainly not to illegally abduct us in international waters and abuse us in prison, but it was that it stopped a humanitarian mission and violating international law by preventing humanitarian aid from entering Gaza, a population that are being systematically starved by Israel. And this is a blatant violation of international humanitarian and maritime law.
Thunberg and her supporters have emphasized that flotilla missions are entirely humanitarian and aimed at assisting civilians in Gaza. Now, of course, this isn't the first time President Trump has publicly criticized the activist. In 2019, he mocked her after she was named Time Magazine's Person of the Year, suggesting she should chill and see a movie. Earlier this year, he also commented on her attempt to reach Israel aboard another aid ship, describing her as angry and different.
Well, she's a strange person. She's a young, angry person. I don't know if it's real anger. It's hard to believe, actually, but I saw what happened. She's certainly different. Anger management. I think she has to go to an anger management class. That's my primary recommendation for her.
The latest remarks by President Trump are the most recent in a long-standing public dispute between the U.S. president and the activist, who's consistently challenged political leaders on climate and humanitarian issues. Their interactions reflect an ongoing clash of perspectives, with the climate activist pursuing her campaigns internationally and the president maintaining his critical stance, highlighting the enduring global attention surrounding her actions. And today we end in South America, where politics and performance collided in dramatic fashion. Argentine President Javier Milei swapped his trademark fiery speeches for black leather and a microphone, headlining a rock concert in Buenos Aires that doubled as the launch of his latest book. The unusual spectacle came as Milei grapples with sliding approval ratings, a shaky peso, and mounting unrest ahead of decisive midterm elections later this month. With Washington weighing in to shore up Argentina's finances, Milei's gamble to revive his rock star image has set the stage for high political drama. Here's more.
Argentine President Javier Milei swapped the podium for the stage this week, donning black leather and belting out rock anthems in front of thousands of supporters. The flamboyant performance, staged in Buenos Aires' Villa Crespo neighborhood, doubled as a book launch and a political rally aimed at reviving his image ahead of crucial midterm elections later this month.
We are going to make Argentina the freest country in the world, and we are going to make Argentina great again. Freedom advances, or Argentina falls back. Thank you very much.
The 15,000-seat arena reverberated with Milei's gravelly voice as he sang a dozen songs by Argentine rock legends and introduced his own group, Banda Presidencial. Draped in Argentina's blue and white flags, the 54-year-old economist turned president dedicated one segment to denouncing a recent anti-Semitic attack in Buenos Aires, before breaking into the Jewish folk tune Hava Nagila. The crowd's muted response contrasted sharply with the roaring ovation when giant screens lit up with images of US President Donald Trump and slain right-wing influencer Charlie Kirk.
They escalated the violence. They tried to kill Jair Bolsonaro. They tried to kill that giant of the world, Donald Trump. They killed Uribe. They have a long record, and recently they took the life of our dear Charlie Kirk.
The spectacle marked the launch of the making of The Miracle, the Argentine case, a 573-page compilation of Milei's speeches. His 14th book arrives at a turbulent political moment, with his popularity slipping and his reformist agenda under strain. Once celebrated abroad for cutting inflation and balancing Argentina's books, Milei now faces fierce domestic backlash over austerity, slumping consumer spending, and widening political battles.
I find it shameful to hold a recital during the terrible crisis that is happening. There are many people out of work, and this seems like a humiliation to me.
Even in the streets, anger simmers. Outside the arena, where Milei was launching his new book, supporters and detractors shouted slogans at each other and clashed with police.
I earn 300,000 pesos. What else is there left to say? If I can't afford the movies, I'll come here to protest. Besides, these people are letting us go completely broke.
In fact, nearly 2 months ago, Milei was also pelted with stones during a recent rally in a Buenos Aires slum, and banners near the concert mocked his spending cuts with biting humour. Economic turbulence has added to the storm. In recent weeks, the peso has suffered sharp falls, prompting the central bank to burn through dwindling reserves to defend it. Amid this backdrop, Milei turned to Washington for help. Last month, he met Trump on the sidelines of the UN General Assembly in New York. The meeting ended with Trump calling him a truly fantastic and powerful leader, and offering a rare, full-throated endorsement.
I'm doing something that I don't often do. I'm giving a full endorsement to him. We just endorsed him for president. As you know, he has a race coming up, and I'm sure he's going to do well, but now I think this hopefully assures it. And to the people of Argentina, we're backing him 100%. We think he's done a fantastic job. He, like us, inherited a mess, and what he's done to fix it is good.
US Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent soon followed with promise of a large intervention to support Argentina, signalling that options ranging from bond purchases to a $20 billion credit line were on the table. The announcements temporarily calmed markets, but for Milei, the stakes are high. His party faces national midterms on October the 26th, and Washington's financial backing could buy him precious breathing space. But Argentina's $10 billion IMF debt payment is looming in 2026, coupled with fragile reserves and deepening domestic unrest, suggests the respite may only be temporary. As the rock star president left the stage to thunderous applause, one question hung in the air. Can Milei's powerful allies abroad and defiant theatrics at home be enough to keep Argentina's economy and his presidency from collapsing?
That's going to do it for us today, and from all of us here at Firstpost America, we thank all of you for tuning in. We hope to see you right back here again tomorrow, and thanks everyone for watching.
Want the facts?
The latest developments?
News that gets straight to the point.
Well, we've got all three just for you. This is Firstpost Live, a brand new show, your window into what really matters.
Don't miss it.